AdWords PPC. The PPC bit stands for pay per click. So this means that you only actually pay when the user clicks, and this typically is the way that AdWords works. Next week we'll be talking about social media advertising, and you can also refer to PPC when you're talking about social media advertising, just as an FYI. Obviously, the thing about search marketing and search advertising is that because it's a reactive play, it's a reactive tactic, because the search is always initiated by an end user. So if you select the right keywords and the right key phrases, and we'll talk about how you approach that, then it's very typically search advertising, is a high converting tactic relative to social media advertising. So it means click-through rates are typically higher, but also conversion rates. And the reason really for that is it's this thing that it's based on reacting to a proactive step that a user has taken. So because a user's initiated the search and they are actually looking for an answer to a question, that's why the click-through rates are higher and conversion rates are higher. Social media advertising is a bit more disruptive. So you're reaching users based on their profiles, not necessarily on an action that they've taken. That's not to say that social's bad and AdWords is better. They can work really well. They should ideally work really well together. And the trade-off really with the higher conversion rates is the cost per click for a typical AdWords campaign, is much, much higher than a cost per click from a typical social ads campaign. So then it's worth saying before we get too far into it, you can, obviously everyone thinks about Google, which is on the left there, but you can run search on other platforms, including Bing, which is on the right here. And Yahoo and there are a few others in international markets sometimes have their own. So Yandex is the one for Russia. But the reason why I just thought I'd point out Bing is that Bing has a significant minority, but it's about 10% of the searches in the UK and similar for other sort of Western European and North American countries. So it's not 90% that Google has, or virtually 90%, but it's 10%, and it's significant in some ways because it's representative of the portion of the population that use Bing, and traditionally that it will be slightly older people. So people sort of like my mum's age, when they buy a computer, they're unlikely to uninstall the Bing, because Bing is owned by Microsoft, and so Microsoft, when they ship computers that have Windows pre-installed, typically will have Internet Explorer as the default browser and Bing as the default search engine. And so for that reason, Bing is an interesting platform, and sometimes you can get quite good value in terms of the cost per clicks for some sectors. But obviously Google is the big daddy, and going forward, most of what I'm going to be speaking with you about is about Google AdWords, but Bing is a platform, and broadly it works in exactly the same way. So when we talk about like the structure of Google Ads campaigns, typically you'll have an account level, which sometimes but not always maps directly to the company. Sometimes companies might run different accounts if they've got materially different business units, but that's the account level is typically the organization that's doing the advertising. And then the campaigns, depending on the sort of the strategy involved, you might have like a lot of campaigns, you might just have a handful. At campaign level, you can control budget. I'll give you an example in the next slide, but if you're a university, for example, and you've got different budgets that you want to allocate to different schools, then you can do that at sort of campaign level. And actually you might break down further than schools depending on your strategy. Ad groups, these are the semantically linked key phrases that we would be talking about. And then they're semantically linked, because at ad group level is how you do your targeting and placements, and some of the adjustments that we'll talk about further in the session. And then the actual individual ads, you essentially need to create one ad for each key phrase or phrases that you're going after. So an example of how an ad group might look like this is an unspecified M&A, so merger and acquisitions agency that work with businesses in the UK that want to sell their businesses, or merge with other businesses. And so when they're looking for clients, they're looking for clients who want to they're looking for clients in different ways. So one of the ways that they look for clients is people who are looking for how to value their company or their business or their organization. So the valuation keywords will be key phrases that obviously are semantically linked around how do I value my company, how do I sell my company is the middle section, and then phrases that's talking specifically about merger and acquisition. So before you start an AdWords project, a bit like SEO really, you would do some keyword research that says, okay, so here are the phrases that we think people are searching, but let's have a look at what they're actually searching for, and specifically how they're writing out those searches, and then also what's the average monthly value in the market that you're looking for. In this case, it's the UK. And so you see that actually it's a minority of people who are using the industry terms of M&A, and actually they're using more sort of simplistic language because they're not M&A people, they're business people who are interested in selling their business. And so that research obviously informs your strategy, and informs how you structure the campaigns and the ad groups that you need to set up. I'll just go quickly. The process is, so you set your objectives as always, and your sort of KPIs, because this is at Google AdWords should be an ROI play. If you're going for direct response marketing, which typically you will be when you're approaching AdWords. Set your KPIs, you define the budgets, and as I said, those budgets, if you're going to allocate them proportionally to different parts of your organization, that would be part of that process, and it would inform how you structure the ad account for those campaigns. Obviously you identify the target audience, which in the case of search is mostly around their search behavior, but there are other indicators that you can use. You do your keyword research, you write the ad copy, which we'll talk about, and then you set up the campaign on the Google Ads platform. But in order to properly measure the performance of a campaign, you need to set up tracking on the website and inside Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, and then we can connect those things to Google Ads, which gives us really great insights once campaigns go live, so we can monitor and report and optimize, do more of what's working, do less of what's not working, or change what's not working. Okay, so the first question then, on Monday we had some really interesting topics and experiences that came up. So have you run AdWords, and if so, how did it work for you, or your current or previous organization? Does anyone have anything to share to kick us off?
We've run AdWords with MintTwist really, and so it's a reasonably recent sort of initiative for us. We've found it quite successful in terms of, being able to identify what people are looking for, appearing at the top of, we're ranking reasonably high in terms of what we do, which is really, really good. What we actually have our biggest issue with at the moment is probably around the KPIs, I think. So what we've noticed is an increasing number of people are engaging with our site via these campaigns, which is great. But we set our KPIs as being things. Our KPIs weren't directly related to the number of registrations we had, although that was the objective down the line. We set KPIs that were directed at engagement with the particular areas of our site. So one might be a test your knowledge thing, or one might be a download a brochure thing, or whatever it is. And what we're finding is that the engagement with the site is increasing. The people clicking on the call to action buttons are increasing. All of this is very good, but the registrations, the actual registrations themselves, are not increasing at the same rate. And so that's probably something to do with refining. We need to kind of delve into this a bit more and refine. So that's the one thing that I've noticed in my experience recently. That's been quite interesting in terms of these type of campaigns.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Mark. And I think Mariona and I were actually over email talking about this exact thing, weren't we, Mariona? Have you got anything to add there?
No, not really. No, I received a lead generation test your knowledge quiz from Elliot, so I contacted him on the back of that. Seems to know a lot about green bonds.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's what Mark's saying is absolutely it's a really good example. So AdWords is driving people to the form. People are clicking on the form, but then there's a form completion process which obviously needs to happen, and the drop-off rate is a bit too high at the moment. So this is where, you know, AdWords meets conversion rate optimization meets Google Analytics, and the good thing is that Mark and Mariona have been able to sort of set up analytics and tag manager, which we'll talk about the week after next, penultimate week. And that gives you the sorts of insights so that Mark and Mariona can have the sorts of conversation that we're having. But yeah, let's ask Brian and Alice. I guess you guys have some experience on AdWords, don't you?
Shall I go first, Brian?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Alice. You continue.
Yeah, so yes, on my previous companies, we did that, and now with the university as well, and with Mintwist as well. And so we do Google search and Bing. We are using Bing for the US market. And we have all these different AdWord groups. You know, we have done the like Audit, and Mintwist has done the keyword research stuff, and everything's implemented and tracked. What is funny is paid social media at the moment works better than Google search for us, and it was the opposite 6 or 9 months ago, where Google search performed better than paid social media. So we're looking into this, and we're trying to improve Google search, and we have just completed an extensive research and a keyword research analysis again with Mintwist, which I need to respond to. But I just got an email today from Daisy. So it's about optimization now, and finding out why it's changed. Like Google search used to work better, and now the paid social media is working better than Google search. So it's a bit, but we can't really neglect it because it's a user intent search, as you said, Elliot. It is, and then I wonder sometimes about our landing pages, because it is user intent. They click on it, they search for something, click on it, and then they drop off. It's a conversion problem as well. Again, where do they land and what do they see in the form completion? I also realized this week our form completion is 67% and the benchmark is 80%. So there's also this layer there. It's lots of things coming together, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you raised so many points there that we could peel off, and because some people will tell you that 67% conversion rate of a form is really, really high.
Yeah.
And yeah, so benchmarks are definitely industry specific. They're also, user specific, and they're also, do remember that there's a lot you can do by simplifying forms. The truth is, the simpler they are, the higher they will convert. The interesting thing is, as I think I might have mentioned, so search and social, they definitely work together, because you can drive user visits via search marketing, and they'll typically be quite well targeted user visits. And then you can convert that user via remarketing, which sometimes shows up as social media, but actually it's what's called an assisted conversion.
Okay.
So in a way, so today we're talking about AdWords. Next week we're going to talk about social advertising. It's almost like, consider this part 1 and next week is part 2, because that's kind of how it works. Social advertising, like when you focus just on profiles, on people's personas, that's right at the top, awareness. Search marketing sits in the middle, because and we'll talk about key phrases. You can have, based on what people are searching, it's almost implied intent. So if you're in an e-commerce play, if someone uses the word buy and a keyword, that's a high intent phrase. Buy women's shoes, it's pretty clear what they want to do. If it's women's shoes for parties, that's a bit more of a researchy type phase. Typically the cost per click of a buy phrase, of a high intent phrase, is higher, but actually you want to catch them both. But and then as I mentioned, social media, or using social media or the Google Analytics or the Google display network to then remarket to people who've hit certain pages or who have interacted with ads, then converts higher still. So yeah, anything you'd like to add, Brian or Flavio? Or
no, I don't think so. I'm good.
No, not really. We never used this, so no.
Okay. And Hannah or Stefania, any question or thoughts or point?
Well, we actually never used it ourselves. We had a campaign where the company that was doing the campaign for us did use it. Myself, I really never used it. I don't think we will actually use it, because for these things we rely on agencies, on outside agencies. But it's good to know. Definitely good to know.
Yeah, I mean, so in a moment I'll talk about some of the tactical elements around how to write keywords, and how the tactical elements work. So if you're outsourcing it all to agency, it might not be that it's just a bit of it mildly interesting for you. But at the back end of this, I'm going to talk about how the actual Google auction works, how the marketplace works, because I think it's worth anyone who's using any agency and or freelance and or internal team to understand how that works, because it's ultimately how you get value. So hopefully that last component will be relevant to you, Stefania. Hannah, anything you want to add?
Not too much from my side, Ellie. I know your team are working on some Google Ads for us, but it was sort of in my crossover, sort of before my time. But we then decided to pause it, I think, because we weren't getting the results that we were hoping for with it. And actually, we sort of went back to look at those insights, which have now come through on the sort of keyword searching and those terms. And actually, I think we'd skipped ahead rather than doing that bit first. So I think this would be the next bit for us now that we've got the insights.
Yeah, I mean, AdWords definitely would be part of the mix for you guys. I mean, it's a really good example. If you don't mind, I'll use it, Hannah. Just before, I guess, lockdown 3, we for the company that Toyota took over, it was Faxi. So we were running some carpooling ads, which right at the start showed some search volume, and obviously as soon as you go into lockdown 3, the search volume just drops off. So it's like almost a perfect case study of how search is driven by user intent. It's not a proactive. You can't just go out and reach people in the way that you can do with social advertising. So so at some stage when the market comes back, the search volumes for things like carpooling should go up, and then as you trend towards more efficient forms of transport, you would expect it to go up further. But yeah, so thanks for thanks for all those points. Any other question or thought before we dig into a bit more detail? Okay, go back to sharing my screen. Right, so thanks for sharing some of those thoughts. That's cool. Let's talk about how we can write an ad. So writing the advertising text that sort of comes up. So off the back of a search, if the user were to search for coffee tables, for example, this might be an example of what an ad would look like. So here are the components, or the main components at least. You sort of got this headline 1 and headline 2 concept. Headline 1 is obviously your main headline. So it's the headline of the ad. Headline 2, if you like, it's a sort of a subheading, if you like. And Google Ads typically is going to give you headline 1 pipe, headline 2. I think you can actually, well, you can put headline 3 as well, which depending on the format of the browser, basically how wide the screen is, that then Google would just decide whether to render that third headline. The URL, this is actually a display URL. So, you know, that's intimating that this is the destination page that the user will actually land on. Now, it's a display URL and not the actual URL, because the actual URL, if we set up an ad campaign properly with targeting, it's going to have lots and lots of code appended onto the end of the URL, and that's typically tracking code. Yeah, and you might have noticed that when you click on ads, you'll see that the actual URL is typically much longer than the display URL. The idea of the display URL is it's actually primarily for the end user. So the end user wants to look at a URL that kind of makes sense and reflects what it is they've searched for. The description is the main body of the text. So this is what we're writing in order, and obviously what we've got right here is got to entice the user to want to click through, because obviously when they see this ad, they're seeing, you know, at least 3 paid ads, and they're seeing, as we saw a few weeks ago, 10 organic results as well. There's things called site links, and these are links to areas of our website that may not be directly related to the search that initiated this ad to be displayed, but may be interesting, you know, to that user. So if you set up, and these things are all optional, but if you set up site links, you can typically improve click-through rates from advertising. If we are a local business, if we have a physical presence and we're set up correctly in Google My Business, then we can have a clickable location, and you can have a telephone number on there, and on mobile that will be also clickable. So these are the key things to think about in ad copy. We definitely want to highlight our unique selling points. You know, it stands to reason, really, if we've got a unique selling point and it's relevant to a specific search term, then we want to probably include it in our copy somewhere. Again, if it's relevant, including prices, promotions, and, you know, potentially exclusive, you know, events or time limited events, then you know, getting those into our ads makes sense, including the actual keywords. So this means if we want to rank for, you know, women's shoes, then including the keyword women's shoes in the copy, it makes sense. As we'll see sort of the back end of this, it helps with our quality score that Google will rate our ads with, but it also helps for users to relate what we're offering to what they've been searching for. And then, you know, obviously grammar and title casing and things like that. CTAs, call to action, because we're trying to entice users to click through on our ads, because you know, we're competing actually with everything else that's on the results page. Addressing an audience directly is good practice. The actual landing page, so the destination page that we're sending a user to, you know, ideally that's going to have similar keywords on the actual landing page. And the idea here is that, again, we'll see at the end, I'll talk to you precisely how the algorithm works, but Google wants to see that an ad is sending user to a page that's reflective of the ad and not something that looks different. So this is how the site link extensions work. So the idea here is that you might write an ad talking about criminology degrees in London, and your URL is going to send you to a relevant landing page for that search result. But you can also include site links that provide general information that might be interesting to the end user. So why this particular university, how to apply general information on undergraduate study, and so on. And so I think you can add up to 4 site links to an ad. Yeah, and the location and the telephone, we've mentioned that already. So structured snippets, these again, when you set up an ad, Google gives you the option to add what it calls structured snippets, which we can think of as kind of USPs. So, if we're, in this case, a coffee table shop, we've got modern styles, we've got mid-century styles, we've got contemporary styles. So these are buzzwords essentially that intimate our USPs. And then call out extensions, similar. It's just another way of putting in some specific USPs, or if we're running a discount, or if we're running a special offer, or there's a special event, it's a way of calling out these types of things. Okay, so keyword research, obviously is based on our products and services. As we said at the top of the session, the keywords that we use within our own industry might not necessarily be the same ways that our users are searching for other products and services. So that's why keyword research helps. These are the words that that represent our products and services, but actually here's how people are searching for them. And then we can also find the estimated cost per click, and estimated how much competition there is, which actually directly relates to the cost per click. And then as you mentioned, so we then group our keywords semantically into ad groups, so we can make our keyword strategy work. When we actually set up the advertising, so on ad group level, we can specify how we want the search to work. So exact match, if someone types in woman's hats, it has to match that search phrase exactly. So we will only get, if we go exact match, we will only get people who typed in woman's hats. So it's going to be really relevant and specific to that particular keyword, but obviously the volume is going to be a bit lower than if we're looser with our targeting. And the way that we can be looser is what's called phrase match. So this means the key phrase that we've included must be in the exact order, but it can have words that come before or after the phrase. So elegant woman's hats would match on a phrase match search, but it wouldn't match on an exact match search. Broad match means the words woman's and hats must exist, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in that order. So elegant hats woman's would show up for broad match modified. And then broad match is any phrase that has woman's or hats in it is going to show up. So clearly broad match is going to give you the biggest volume, but potentially it's less relevant than the other tactics.
Can I ask a silly question?
Yeah, please, no silly questions. Yeah.
Does punctuation, like the possessive apostrophe in that search, the women's hat, does that influence a match, or does punctuation not?
I don't cast iron know the answer to that question. My feeling, so I'm going to get the answer, I'll post it in the group afterwards. My feeling is that the punctuation of women apostrophe S and women no apostrophe S without apostrophe would both, Google would collect that even on exact match. That's my feeling.
I'm just curious how nuanced it is, that's all.
It is a really good question, and if you think about it, because using those plus signs, and then we're talking about negative keywords here, you can, if you specifically didn't want woman's apostrophe S, you could get it out by going by going minus woman's apostrophe S, and then it wouldn't include it. So what we're talking, does that make sense, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah. So negative keywords, typically the way you would use that is if you're a luxury offer and you don't want to include the word cheap, you go negative cheap. It potentially, if you've got a competitor and you don't want to appear for any searches that reference a competitor's name, is you could use the negative keywords there to stop that. And yeah, negative keywords are quite important. Typically what Mintvest would do is run a campaign for a while, and if you see there are certain phrases that contain certain words that are where the click-through, well, where the conversion rate is lower than all of the others, then you just add them in the negative keyword list, and it's one way over time to improve the performance of ad campaigns. Okay, so before I go into the last little section where we'll talk about how the marketplace works and how Google actually charges for this stuff, I'm really interested to go around and just hear from people. If you run a search and you've got some ads at the top that are responding to your search, and you've got some organic answers, where is your preference? Is it the organic result or is it the paid result? And or what's your take on either proactively bidding against competitors or passively bidding against competitors? I'm just really interested to know what your individual takes are on this. So let's go around, and shall we start with Alice?
The first question, Elliot, I don't know, because I think it depends what I'm searching for. Because sometimes really on the product or service I'm looking for, sometimes I would look at organic relay because I just want to avoid any advertising. But sometimes it might be a good ad or a good deal, or it really depends. Or if it's a promotion, I would click and have a look. But I think the tendency is organic in a way. And for the second question, we are bidding on competitors but it's more expensive. And I had a chat last week with Mintvest in our weekly call, because we realized that for the competitor bids, it's the costs are much higher, but we decided to keep it for time being, because there is no way around it, because we need to show when someone looks for our competition. But we added some, for example, for the MBA program, we added some negative keywords, because they were even, for MBA keywords, it was even more expensive than the competition terms. So for MBA, we added some negative keywords in order not to appear. So this will be implemented this week to improve or optimize search.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. There's a bunch of good points there. I'm interested in also what you're saying around organic versus paid. Before I talk too much about that, what are other people's thoughts on, do you click on the paid result versus the organic result?
I'm happy to go next, Elliot, if that's all right. I think, again, same as Alex, I think it depends on the scenario. So I think sometimes I'll click on the paid stuff, but it's when it shows you the picture. So normally, like personally, I'm shopping. That's what I'm online doing. So I love shopping. So if it shows me something that I think I want, then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, they've absolutely read my mind. That's what I wanted. So I'll click on that. But I think if the pictures aren't there, I think I naturally now just look for the URL and actually don't consider anything that's in that box. And it was really interesting just now breaking down all of the different components, because I don't think I've ever looked at those. And I just go straight away, okay, is that the URL I want? Yeah, it's the right shop. And I click on that. So I think a little bit of both, depending on the scenario. And then from a work perspective, we're not really there yet to have a really comment on that side of it.
Yeah, No, thanks for that. That is quite interesting. And the way that Google Shopping ads renders is very similar to what we're talking about here, but with some additions like images. It was funny because on Monday when I asked this question, someone said it depends on whether she interpreted it as understandably as if you've got an organic result and a paid ad for the same company, which one would I click on? And she said, it depends on whether I like the company or not. If I don't like them, I'll click on the ad and make them pay. And if I do like them, I'll click on the organic result, which I thought, and then actually, but pretty much everyone else on the call agreed that they did exactly the same. So that's one way of looking at it. But look, the truth is there is still, I think the majority of people, when you ask this question, and actually the data bears it out, probably will tend to go to the organic result if it's giving them what they want. I think where paid advertising really works is if you can make an offer that sort of stands out and it's interesting, then people will click on it if it really tempts their interest. And I suppose the thing to think about then, if you're considering Google AdWords, or the reason why, in our opinion, I suppose it works, is because you can't really lose, because if they don't click on you, if they click on the organic ad, it's not like it's costs you anything. Moreover, you've actually got that little bit of brand awareness, particularly as Hannah mentioned, if you make that URL nice and relevant, and obviously the rest of the copy. I don't know if anyone, Mark or Mariona, do you want to say anything about?
No, not for me, mate. I think everyone else covered it. I completely agree. I would normally go organic. If something really catches my eye, I'd take a paid ad. The paid ads kind of remind me of the old classifieds. You used to read the old paper and it's classified in the back, and people had to really concentrate, really think about you're getting charged by the character, right? So they have to think about the words. No, nothing really. Organic's definitely the way to go for me.
Yeah, similar for me. I tend to favor organic. I think occasionally, if I think, if I don't, obviously, if it looks interesting, if it catches my eyes, I might go for the ad. So it depends.
The other question is, do you bid on your own brand? Is that something?
I didn't quite understand it, to be honest. What do you mean by that? Sorry, it's probably our language barrier. What do you mean to bid again? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question really is: so if you're University of Richmond in London, do you bid on your own brand so that you appear number one?
Oh, I see. Okay.
You're very likely you're going to be number one for the organic result. Do Nike do that? Do Puma do that? Do Adidas do that? We got into the conversation on Monday, and there are sort of mixed feelings about whether it's worth it or not. I don't know. Alice or Brian, do University of Richmond, are we doing that at the moment?
I don't know about that. I'll defer to Alice on that. But one thing that I wanted to add just quickly is that I'm probably the biggest bigot when it comes to this type of stuff, knowing the importance of it and paid for. And yet when I do browsing for shopping, I use an incognito window because I can't stand the pop-up ads or the the remarketing and all. So I go incognito to shop.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Sorry, can I ask? Yes. They appear spontaneously without me searching for them, because maybe I've searched those companies before. Are these paid? You consider them part of these paid AdWords or not?
Which ads are you referring to, Stefania?
Well, even if I'm reading, I don't know, The Guardian, then something appears, maybe something I've watched, a search in the past. Do you consider this part of this system or not?
Yeah.
Those are different. Is it a different product?
It's a different product. We'll talk about it specifically next week. But when you're reading the Guardian or the Daily Mail and you see an ad at the top of the screen, it's both of those sites use what's called the Google Display Network. So it's banner advertising. Yeah. But the way that banner advertising is really effective is if it's triggered by remarketing or retargeting. So if a user has clicked on a tourist company's page talking about trips to Milan, for example, then that same tourist company can remarket to all of those users that have been on that page via cookies, and they can send that data to the Google Display Network, so they will market to them when they're reading the Guardian newspaper.
Okay, so something slightly different.
It is different. It is different from AdWords. Yeah, it's a different tactic, but it can be connected in the way that we're talking about, because you can use the ads to get the person to go to the page, and then you use remarketing to go back to them essentially.
Well, myself, then I use mainly organic then. And also for Italy, I think it's mainly organic because Italy is a unique product. It's not, okay, maybe we can link it with words like holiday or, I don't know, European holidays, whatever, but somebody who's looking for a holiday in Italy would put Italy or Italian. So it will be, I think, in my view, mainly organic in this sense.
Yeah. No, and again, the conversation the other day, and it's probably a similar one here. If you're, if you've got a really narrow market that you're targeting, the temptation is to think that PPC, if you've got a narrow market and high value, if you're selling carpooling systems that cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, then PPC, you're not going to get a direct conversion. What is the value of attracting all of those people that are interested in carpooling over a period of 6 months or a year to your website so that you can remarket to them, via the Google Display Network for another 6 months? It's potentially quite high. If you're a university that needs to attract thousands of undergraduates every single year, then it becomes, the value becomes much more obvious. I'm in a digital agency, but I'm genuinely not here to sell AdWords or any particular tactic. But I think you could make a strong case for including it in reality in almost any business, including selling, Italy as a destination. Yeah, but yeah, and then on the branded terms, the way that some brands are increasingly looking at it is that owning the ad placement and owning the organic placement is like, that's a statement that we own this brand name. It's ours. Moreover, I'm going to talk in a moment. We'll finish off by talking about how the marketplace works and how it charges. Now, if you're a brand and you pay for your own brand terms, the cost per click will be very low, because Google is saying that you are that brand and you're really related to this term. Therefore, I'm going to give you a better quality score and the cost per click will be low. And it's why Alice referred to, if you do start advertising on competitor brands, there's nothing wrong with that. Quite the opposite. It's actually a good tactic. But your cost per clicks will be a bit higher because you're not directly related to that brand. So you pay a bit more to reach those terms that you're not typically related to. Now, normally you wouldn't want to do that when you're going after competitors. Then obviously that's a case where you would. Cool. And then on the point that Brian mentioned, it is the case that that a lot of individuals are looking to use things like incognito windows and ad blockers and things like that And even some of the platforms themselves are making it a bit more difficult for some of the ad platforms to do the tracking that up until now has been very easy. So it's an interesting development, and it's definitely going to it's going to evolve the way that people use these tools going forward. Okay, I've said a bunch of stuff there. So are there any more comments or follow-ups or anything before we go into this last little section?
Something.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, Rosie, please, yeah.
I've been given different advice from different agencies that I've worked with before. So both within education. So before I was always told you should bid on your own brand terms, because if you're not, then probably someone else is. I think at Metfilm now, I'm pretty sure we are bidding on our own brand terms, but I also do think we're bidding on competitors as well. But I just wondered if that was right, because then I've had other managers before that don't agree with bidding on your own brand.
Well, I think you're right. What I'm saying, just to be clear, is I think you should bid on your own brands, because it's a low cost per click, and if you're, the Metfilm is a brand, and it makes sense for you to own the ad and own the organic result, because if you don't own the ad and a competitor goes on it, probably most users are still going to click on the organic result anyway. But from a brand equity perspective, Mint Twist's advice has been for a while now is that you would do it. And most people we say that to go, yeah, okay, fair enough. It it doesn't really, it's not valuable in the sense that if people click on it, it's probably a bit of a waste of 10 pence, because they would have clicked on the organic result anyway. But from a kind of brand equity perspective, we think it makes sense. The competitors, it's case by case, because some in some sectors, people just don't want to do it. So that's a strategic decision that we would leave up to clients typically.
Fair enough.
Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so look, I'll go into the last section. It's not gonna it's relatively short, so I think we'll be finished we'll finish early today. But any questions as I'm going through this next bit, feel free to shout out as I go through, or leave it to the end. It's up to you. So the Google auction ad rank and quality score. So let's just sort of step through this then. So the way that as we've said, it's a cost per click. So every time you click on an ad, Google charges your ad account. But the important thing is to know is that the price is not fixed. It's absolutely not fixed. Even at the millisecond that the user enters the search into the search engine, Google is at that stage is going to run an auction, a real-time auction in that split second, and the auction will look for all of the adverts inside ad groups, inside campaigns, inside accounts that are match using those matching rules that we spoke about earlier in the other targeting options that match that particular phrase. And if it finds, for example, 6 advertisers who are all going for that phrase, it's going to run an auction based on broadly 2 things. One thing is the quality of that particular ad that in relation to that particular search request, and the other thing is the bid, which is essentially this is the maximum amount we will pay, all things given equal, for a click of this particular kind. And again, that can be set obviously inside the ad platforms. Now the quality score is made up of a lot of things, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the thing to really make sure we understand is when it combines the bid and the quality score, it gives you an ad rank relative to all of the other advertisers that are going for that particular phrase. So if you're ranked in position 1, you'll be shown in position 1. If you're ranked in position 2, you'll be shown in position 2. And the top 3 will typically be shown, and positions 4, 5, and 6 don't get shown at all, typically. Now, the other thing that's really important is that as part of that auction process, it determines the price that each individual advertiser is going to pay, and it's not the same. It may very well, and because based on quality or Google's perception of quality of the ad in relation to the search, it will give a different price, and it varies quite significantly for each advertiser. So what is the quality score actually made of? So this is really at the heart now of what is good advertising versus bad advertising. We want to maximize our quality score, and the way that we do that is these are the main things, not the only things, but the main things. First of all, it's relevance. So relevance says how relevant is the search phrase to the advert. So it's going to look at the URL, it's going to look at the title, it's going to look at the body text. So how relevant is it to that ad? How relevant is it to the specific keyword? So that's as simple as, drop the keywords into the relevant areas. Then it's going to look at the expected click-through rate. So what Google does is it has a look at your account, our account, and over a period of time, it starts to benchmark how many humans are actually clicking through our ads. And if our click-through rate, is relatively high, then Google's saying that's a signal that real-world humans are actually clicking through these ads. So we're going to reward that account and that campaign, and it goes down to ad group level as well, with a high expected click-through rate, and therefore we're going to append those extra points to the quality score. It also looks at the landing page, so it goes using the same algorithm that it works for to rank sites for SEO. It will go and look specifically at a landing page that's connected to an ad and say, how relevant is that landing page to that ad? How well structured and well formed is it? HTML compliant? All of those things. Is it mobile friendly? And then it gives a general historical performance in terms of quality score for the account, and it combines all of these things to create a quality score for a particular ad, and obviously it incorporates the max bid, as I mentioned. And then what it ends up with then is you end up with a aggregated normalized score between 1 and 10, 1 being like the highest quality you can be, and 10 being the lowest quality you can be. And the cost per click, the normalized cost per click, if it's as good as it can, if the quality is high as it can possibly be, is cut in half. If we've got the lowest quality score possible, it's increased by 400%. So it's multiplied by 4 times. And so just forgive the number heavy slide here, but what that actually means is if you are, spending £1 million a year on advertising, like some organizations, have to do to hit their numbers, £1 million, whatever, a year, let's say, and the normalized cost per click is £1. And let's just assume, for argument's sake, bear with me here, that you've got a conversion rate, meaning the number of people who land on our site, 1% of them will convert to become a customer. And let's assume the average purchase price is £400. Let's assume those are normalized figures, and they will stay the same regardless of how quality or not our advertising is. If we make that assumption, in the worst case scenario, if we always have the lowest quality, we'll always pay 4 times more than we should do. So instead of paying £1 per click, we're paying £4 per click, which means our £1 million of ad budget is buying 250,000 clicks at £4. And the 250,000 clicks, at a 1% conversion rate multiplied by £400, sorry for the maths lesson, will give you £1 million of sales. So your ad budget is giving you of £1 million, is giving you £1 million of sales, so you're at break even. If you are running those ads at the maximum quality, meaning you'll pay half the normalized cost per click, meaning 50p, it means that you can buy 8 times the number of clicks than you would have done if you were at the worst quality. So it's 2 million clicks for the £1 million, which would generate £8 million of sales. So the variation in outcome based on quality is enormous. So when you engage an agency, or an internal team or a freelancer, yes, you want everything done correctly, but ultimately it's about how much more can I get from my ad budget? And that's really the name of the game. So that's all I wanted to share today. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, and hopefully that's given some food for thought, and I can answer any questions if anyone's got any on any of that.
So they are extremely effective, these ads. They seem to be, in order to sell, if you do it properly.
Yeah, I think Google AdWords and Google digital advertising done correctly over a period of time should be an ROI play, and it should be very, very effective.
Mm-hmm. More than normal advertising, or than other forms of advertising.
Well, look, I wouldn't. I think, look, it depends on clearly on your business and your organization setup, but there's always a place for other forms of advertising, offline advertising, PR, and all of this stuff works together. But digital advertising, and in particular Google AdWords, it's a high converting channel, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Elliot.
Please.
Going back to are we bidding on our own brand? Yes. I'm just a bit confused. So if I'm a brand, as in I'm London Business School or Imperial College or UCL, yes, would I still bid on my own brand? Or is it more like for unknown brands? But then the unknown brands, if no one knows me, why should I bid on my own brand terms? I got confused.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I raised that because the brand term one is always like, it's an interesting question, or if you like. That's why I raised it. Let me just screen share just for a moment. So I literally just typed in Nike into my search engine. You're seeing my screen, right?
Yeah.
So at the top here, JD Sports is ahead of Nike Official, which is pretty mad, actually. I'm not quite sure how that's working. They must have gone, because this intuitively tells me that the quality score here shouldn't be higher than the Nike one, because the JD Sports, the relevancy scores would all be really low. So they must have really increased their bid here so that they're number one and not number two. So I'm not at the risk of sort of that. Does that sort of give you your answer? Because it tells you that JD Sports feel that is a tactic that's going to generate them more sales. And as you can see, they've got a specific call out here, which is implying, I guess, that you can buy Nike stuff cheaper at JD Sports than you can do on the Nike official shop, which may or may not be true. I don't know. But it's probably a tactic that's working for them.
Elliot, I have a question about that, and sorry if it's a bit of a silly one, but obviously if you type up Nike from a different country, you don't get JD Sports. So is like, of course, Nike internationally is competing against JD regionally. So how does that work? And
yeah, no, so that's an extremely good question. Remember, we've just breezed the surface here. So if the targeting options that I was talking about, underneath the hood, you can target by, even within AdWords, the targeting options are similar to what you might expect with social. You can go obviously by country, you can go by region, you can go by city, you can go by time of day, you can go by device. You can even, to a certain extent, draw down on what Google understands about its users. So Google recently I'm talking about Google AdWords. It used to be a completely separate platform, but now it's actually been integrated with their display network, with their YouTube, which they also own. Google Shopping is another variant. So the targeting options that sort of underpin AdWords, are much bigger than sort of what we've gone over the basics today. And so the answer to your question is, you're absolutely right. In other countries, JD, won't be there. Even me as an individual, I'm sometimes going to get different results compared to other individuals based on Google's understanding of my profile and what the advertisers have put in their targeting options.
Yeah, fair enough. Would you be able, because as you said, we're only scratching the surface. There's just so much to consider. I think it's very complex. Would you be able to share resources where we could get a bit more information on how it all works?
Yeah, I'll put some links in the
thank you
in the event. So Google itself provides some pretty good resources, and I'll send you links to them.
Thank you.
Actually, Elliot, on the back of that, I've got a question. It's not necessary. Well, hopefully it's related, about keyword searching. So, really, really important to try and get the best keywords possible, right? When you're doing this research, like, how do you know that these are the words that people are using when they're looking for your type of product? And I suppose it's about understanding your type of product best. So do you have any, is there any, I don't know, resources in the same respect as Mariana just asked for, that, sort of gives a good idea of how to start doing that keyword research?
Yeah, I do. There are a bunch of resources. I mean, the tools themselves are probably a good start. So if you
so let me give you an example of what I mean. So there's a course that we offer that covers what we refer to as the primary market, right? Which is if you're working in a treasury department, or you're working in a corporation, and you need to figure out what kind of finance to raise. You need to buy something. You need to buy something big, and you're not sure whether you want to get a loan, or whether you want to issue stocks in your company, or whether you want to issue bonds. Right? That's roughly it. And so we're saying, okay, well, this is the course we offer, and we're going, well, how do we figure out what are the best keywords for people when people are searching for a course like that? So obviously we would use the words of the title of the course, so we'd like, primary market and introduction and foundation and these type of things, because, you're looking for beginners things to do with this stuff. But maybe what we understand, in fact, this has been proven a few times with us, that the terminology that we use, the keywords that we consider, the words that we consider key, may not be keywords that everybody else in the world uses, right? So this is what I'm trying to, I suppose, this is what we're trying to explore at the moment, with some SEO work we're doing and all sorts of different things. It's like, are we using the right keywords?
Yeah, and that's a question that's fundamentally answered by keyword research, because you put in your target phrases, and it should spit out all of the semantically related phrases, and then you look at the search volumes, and it will give you your answer. There are tools. A lot of them, there used to be a lot of relatively free tools, but most of them now are paid for. They're not depending on how much data you sign up for, they're not overly expensive. I will share them. share them in the event, and I can email them to you, Mark, because the question you're asking can definitely be answered relatively quickly by keyword research.
Okay.
I think as well, one of the issues we're finding, and I don't know if it really is an issue, but is it possible that also our topic area is so niche that then finding keywords is like the keywords that we find are actually very limited, and they might already be the ones that we're already using?
That question's definitely relevant. So some tools are going to take you so far, but it's also exploring the ways that you think some customers might be, searching for your stuff, and then putting them in the tools and then seeing what it gives you, and it might give you some more semantically related phrases that you hadn't originally thought of.
Okay, thank you.
It's all right. Are there any other? Alice, did it answer your question about the branding?
So I suppose Nike is doing it, right? But
Nike are doing it. Yes. So Nike are doing it. So as you can see,
I saw that. I assumed that. Okay.
Yeah.
So the big brands are doing it. The big brands are doing it.
Well, the big brands are doing it, but actually, because this SimilarWeb is one of the tools that I was going to suggest that Mark and Mariona look at, as is SEMrush. And as I was searching for SimilarWeb, I've just seen they're doing it as well. So the top organic, but they're the top ad. SimilarWeb is not a world-renowned brand. People who work in digital know about it, but so they're doing it because, and I guess they've got a few competitors in the space, and they just want to make sure that they're there. Like I said, I won't click on it because I do like this company, but even if I didn't click on it, it wouldn't cost them. It would be a very low cost per click relative to keyword research tools, where they would probably pay £1.50 for this click. They might pay 10 or 20 pence for. Yeah. So it's not definitely not something to lose sleep over, Alice. It's not, because it's
just wondered,
yeah, there are bigger questions really, but it's just an interesting one to throw out there. Any other oh, by the way, I've got some really good news. On the Monday session, there's I don't know if you remember from the very first kickoff we had, but there's Knoops, which is a hot chocolate company, and they've agreed to gift everyone some free hot chocolate who's on this course. So they've asked all of your email addresses, and I shared it with them the other day. So I think
brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, expect that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No, thanks to them. It was their idea. It wasn't. I didn't push them into it.
Yeah, but we don't get to see them, so tell them things on our behalf.
Yeah, no, well, I will do.
So Elliot, I read your you posted today about the efficacy of this of live streaming this session.
Yes.
How are you finding it? I mean, it wasn't the most positive post I've ever read, to be honest with you.
No, I don't misread. I posted it the other day, actually. What I found is that this group here, it's brilliant. The reach that I'm getting via the LinkedIn event is not as high as the reach I would get if I streamed this directly to my personal profile. That was my main finding.
Right.
And I wasn't, when I first started this, I ummed and erred about whether to stream this to my personal profile versus whether to run it as an event. And so the benefit of running it as an event is I can say, I'll put the answers in the event, I'll put the slides in the event, and also this gets streamed to the event every single week. But because the number of people who are signed up to the event is a massive subset of my total network, which is relatively high, the reach is just lower. So it wasn't a negative comment. I believe that, you know, the event has its merits. If you want maximum reach, then it probably acts as a barrier.
Right. So running it as an event, the infrastructure is there to be able to do everything you want to be able to do. So they've got the infrastructure, that's bang on, but the actual reach is far less than if you're. So I suppose LinkedIn will be looking at working some way where you can kind of marry those, because those two are quite fundamental kind of, you know, running and having an established infrastructure to be able to run the course is really, really important to be able to do it well. As you say, you know, you got to somewhere to post, you know, somewhere to post the content and store everything and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, obviously to get the most people possible joining the event, you need that reach as well. So that maybe that's something that LinkedIn will look at, sort of, I don't know, finding some way to.
You're right. No, you're right. And it definitely comes down to objectives. So my objective is I wanted to do this with you people. I'm loving, I'm really enjoying this way more than I thought. It might be an overhead, but it's a pleasure. And I feel like you guys are getting value out of it. I'd love to get some subjective feedback at the end of the course, obviously from everyone. But it definitely depends on the objective. So just to give you an example, so just yesterday, MintTwist hosted an event for another client that's not on any of these courses, and we used Zoom has a webinar system, pretty sophisticated system. I think you might use it at ICMA, but where you can have attendees who are silent attendees, and you can have panelists. So we are essentially panelists, if you like, in this scenario, and the people who are watching live, which, like I mentioned, is limited in number, and they're coming in and out, are the fly on the wall attendees. So you don't actually need the LinkedIn structure to run it. There are systems like Zoom, and at pretty low cost, you can do it in an even more structured way, let's say.
Right. Right. Well, no, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, we're starting to take our first steps into content development, and which we will, so hub. I've now got the terminology, you know, it's hub content, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but we're starting to take our first steps to this, and we'll create the content via Zoom. And then once we have created the content, we'll start, you know, we'll edit it down into manageable chunks, and we'll post it in various places. Yeah. Once we've done that, I mean, you know, and build up a little sort of, I don't know, portfolio or whatever it is of stuff that we can post. Another avenue that we could explore is, well, what happens if we start hosting small event-like things which are free, that, you know, much as you know you've done yourself, but we say, okay, great, we're going to take a little, you know, we're going to take an element out of a 3-day course, which might be 30 minutes or whatever it is. We'll take something that we can have a distinct couple of learning outcomes from, for example, and we'll host it on an event, you know, as an event, and we'll try and promote it via the ICMA, you know, LinkedIn group, which is kind of 10,000 plus followers, and try and get as much traction as we can, you know. And I think so. I'd actually be quite interested to hear at the end of this course what your feelings on how this has gone, because it's something that, you know, we'll look at an option as well.
Yeah. Look, I mean, while we're here, then, because next week is social ads, and then the week after is analytics and goals. So that would be week 7. So week 8 is a bit of I was actually going to sort of canvass opinion about what you wanted to cover. I could potentially do some on video, including live streaming, but we could also sort of reflect on what this setup was and how it worked, and I could broaden it out. So we look at how you might do similar things on Facebook and other, Instagram and other channels if you want. Maybe give that some thought, and then, you know, I'll send an email around with a week to go or something. But yeah, I'll be delighted to share as much as everything, you know, and more.
Yeah, that's great, mate. Excellent. Well, look, thank you very much for today, and see everybody next week.
Bye, Mark. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.